Ladies and gentlemen, the President and Vice President of the United States, accompanied by Miss Linda Crawford.
Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the President, may I welcome you to the White House and to the Rose Garden. I will introduce the person who will present the President. Before I introduce her, I would like to acknowledge some of the distinguished guests who are present, beginning with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Donna Shalala, the Administrator of the Food and Drug Administration, David Kessler, and the entire team that has worked with Donna and David, including Assistant Secretary Phil Lee and all the folks in his office. And believe me, that team over there at FDA and HHS really deserves your applause, as you well know. The Director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, General Barry McCaffrey, members of Congress who are present, Representative Marty Meehan of Massachusetts, and Representative Dick Durbin of Illinois, two members of Congress who have fought tirelessly on this issue, and I know personally, because I served with him of what Dick has done, and I've watched with admiration what Marty has done. Also in the President's Cabinet, Carol Rasko, a domestic policy advisor. I see former Secretary of HHS Joe Califano. And I want to especially welcome someone who has made a tremendous difference on this issue for our country, former Surgeon General Dr. C. Everett Koop, who is also with us today. I want to single out 4 attorneys general who are present. From Maryland, Joe Curran. From Mississippi, Michael Moore. From West Virginia, Darrell McGraw. And from Michigan, Frank Kelly. And we are honored to excuse me, I was afraid I was going to miss somebody. The Attorney General from Florida, a good friend, Bob Butterworth, and from New York State, consumer advocate Mark Green. And there are many other advocates and activists and individuals who have worked hard on this issue. I want to acknowledge Morton Downey, Jr., who is here. And those who have worked with associations and professional groups that have really carried the ball include Dr. Lonnie Bristow, past president of the American Medical Association, Dr. George Dessart, chairman of the American Cancer Society, Dr. Jan Breslow, chairman of the American Heart Association, Dr. Alfred Munzer, past president of the American Lung Association, and we're joined by some young people from Montgomery County, Maryland, including several who participated in one of the events I did on the President's behalf on this issue, and several, I think, who have been with the President before. They are really active and effective on this issue, and we are really proud of your leadership among your peers on this question. Thank you for joining us here today. This truly is an historic occasion. There are times in each of our lives when we're called upon to make decisions that will influence the lives of others. All parents know the feeling of trying to guide their children through the rocky shoals of life's dangers and temptations. And every parent knows how difficult it is when the lessons children learn at home are overwhelmed by the messages they get from popular culture and from billboards and magazines. Today, here at the White House, there is no mixed message. We're turning up the volume on the right message for children. Don't smoke. Right now, every state in the Union has a law prohibiting the sale of tobacco to persons under 18 years old. But these laws by themselves are not enough to protect our children. That's abundantly obvious. Too often, these laws are honored only in the breach. We owe it to our children to do better. We owe it to our children to walk the extra mile to protect them from the #1 preventable cause of death in the United States of America today. That is why today President Clinton is taking the difficult actions necessary to reduce the access of young people to tobacco and the activities that now encourage them to become addicted. That is why the President is acting to reduce the advertising and the subtle messages that persuade America's children to start a habit that will stop them before they can stop it, too many of them. So to those who market these products in ways that encourage our children to light up, today we say lights out. You know, the decision whether or not to smoke should be made by an adult with full awareness of the risks involved, not a vulnerable child manipulated by billions of dollars of advertising money. That's not just my opinion. That's the law of the land. I want to say on a personal note that I'm intensely proud to serve with this president. And I had the chance to watch him make this decision. And if there's anybody listening who does not think this decision took courage and character, leadership and values, they don't understand the issue. There's a reason why no other president in the history of the United States of America ever made this decision. This president stepped up to it. Both he and I and our families know the sorrow that so often results when people become addicted to tobacco. The woman it is my honor to introduce to you now also knows that sorrow. Her husband, like millions of Americans, was a victim of an addiction he could not undo. And she is here today, like all of us, to join in America's effort, led by our president, to save future generations from the same fate. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the microphone Linda Crawford. You want this step? I don't think you need it.
Hi, everyone. I'll never forget standing here a year ago with my husband Victor at the President's radio address. We come to support the President's fight to save our children from the devastating toll of tobacco. On that day, my husband told the nation, go after the young people. Every one you get now is someone you're going to save 10, 20, 30 years from now from going the route that I'm taking. And when he finished speaking, the President stood up and applauded my husband. Well, Mr. President, in the name of my husband, and in the name of our children, in the name of my children, I have come here today to join all parents in applauding your leadership, your commitment, and your courage. Thank you. As many of you know, my husband, Victor Crawford, was a former tobacco lobbyist who died this past March of smoking-related cancers. Cancers that slowly and painfully ravaged his body and destroyed his throat, his lungs, his liver, and his bones. He could have chosen to die much earlier with much less pain, and he could have chosen to spend the last chapter of his life saying goodbye to his family and friends. But he understood that there was nothing more important that he could do with his last breaths of life than to warn America's youth that tobacco kills. You see, it had happened to him, and he wanted to make sure that it didn't happen to anyone else's children or to anyone else's families. I can't tell you how proud my husband would have been today of this President's leadership and character. In the 30 years since the Surgeon General's landmark report on smoking, this President has taken the boldest steps in history to save our children from tobacco. Never before in history has a President had the courage and leadership to stand up, speak out, and to act to protect our children against tobacco. He is putting our children's interest, our nation's families' interest, above special interest. On the day of the President's radio announce, I remember struggling to help my husband into our car, and he began to cry. He cried because there was someone in the White House who was willing to use his leadership, no matter how difficult it was, to do the right thing by children and our families. He cried because he knew that this was going to be a long battle and that he would not be alive to see it through to the end. But he knew somebody else would. And he knew in his heart and soul, and I knew, that the President would keep his promise. And today he has. It is my great honor to introduce a true hero. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Linda, for your courage and your commitment to carry on Victor's legacy and your own crusade. Thank you, Mr. Vice President, Secretary Shalala, General McCaffrey. I'd like to say a special word of thanks to Commissioner Kessler and to Phil Lee, the Assistant Secretary at HHS. In different ways, they have a great triumph today. Thank you, Dick Durbin, for being the first member of Congress ever to talk to me about this issue. Thank you, Marty Meehan. Thank you to my former colleagues, the Attorneys General. Mr. Kelly, I know you're retiring this year as the senior Attorney General in America, and we served together back in the dark ages, and I can't imagine a more fitting capstone to your career than the fact that you've been a part of this, and we thank you. Thank you, Mark Green. I thank all the medical professionals who are here. I thank all the young people who are here, including Anna Santiago and Neil Stewart McSpadden, who came out here with us. I want to say a special word of thanks to 3 members of Congress who are not here but who deserve to be because of their work on this issue, Senator Lautenberg of New Jersey, Senator Wellstone of Minnesota, and Congressman Henry Waxman of California. Thank you, Joe Califano, for beating on me about these issues all these years we've been friends and long before I ever became president. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Koop, for everything you have done to try to bring some sanity into the health policy of this country. This has been a great week for you. We had the Kassebaum-Kennedy bill a couple of days ago and this today. Maybe you can design an encore for us over the next month or two. But you have been a great force for good in this country, and we're grateful to you. If I might, I'd like to say just a couple of personal words to some people who really deserve an enormous amount of credit for this decision. The Vice President was altogether too modest and too restrained, but the first time we began to discuss this was about the time the FDA opened their inquiry. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I said, well, you know what this might lead to? And he said, I certainly hope so. And I said, well, you know, I shouldn't say this is our private conversation. I said, you know, it really isn't an accident that nobody else has ever tried to do this. It's not an accident. This is not going to be one of those freebies, you know. And he began to talk about his sister who died of lung cancer, how much he loved his sister. We've had so many conversations about his sister that, not just about this, but about her life, the fact that she was one of the very first Peace Corps volunteers, that I feel almost that I know her personally. And I could see in his eyes this determination to redeem the promise of her wonderful life. And I would also like to thank Nancy Gore Hunger's husband, Frank Hunger, who now serves as our Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Division. Thank you for being here, Frank. I know this is a great day for you. I'd like to thank my wife, who's been talking to me about this issue for 20 years, and my wonderful daughter, who convinced my mother to quit smoking on her 8th birthday. Something I was never able to do. So each of us has a personal journey here that has brought us to this point. But today we are here as a nation to try to help our parents do a better job in raising their children to be strong and healthy and good citizens, and to do our duty in that regard. We've tried to do a lot of things to help our kids over the last 4 years, and to help parents raise their children. We've worked hard on cultural issues, supporting things like the V-chip and educational television. We had a big increase in support for anti-drug programs in our schools and for drug treatment. And we vetoed efforts to reduce those, although we should be investing more. We have a zero-tolerance policy to keep guns out of school. We're requiring our states to enforce anti-drinking and driving laws. We defended drug testing cases involving student athletes. We've worked to bring order and discipline into our children's lives by encouraging and giving support to communities that try things like community-based curfews and school uniforms and tougher enforcement of truancy laws. We know, however, that in spite of all the things that are going right in this country, with the economy up and more jobs, with the crime rate down, with fewer people on welfare and food stamps, dramatically higher percentage of our young children immunized, that we have continued to see substantial rises in tobacco and drug use among our young people. We know that while the scientific evidence is clearly unclear, children who do smoke cigarettes are much more likely to engage in other risky behavior, including the use of marijuana and cocaine. So we have to keep pressing forward to deal with these challenges, every one of them. And I want to thank General McCaffrey for being willing to give up his 4 stars and magnificent campaign to take on the drug fight for America's children and America's future. I thank you, sir. Today we are taking direct action to protect our children from tobacco, and especially the advertising that hooks children on a product. I hear from time to time politicians say that they don't really think advertising has much to do with it. And whenever I hear one say that, I say, well, how come we're all spending so much money advertising when we run for office then? If it's immaterial, let's just pull it all off and see what happens to us. Cigarette smoking is the most significant public health problem facing our people. More Americans die every year from smoking-related diseases than from AIDS, car accidents, murders, suicides, and fires combined. The human cost doesn't begin to calculate the economic cost. The thing that galvanized the legal claims of the attorney generals, the absolutely staggering burdens on the American healthcare system and on our economy in general. But make no mistake about it, the human cost is by far the most important issue. For every day, even though it's illegal, 3,000 of our young people start smoking, and 1,000 of them will die earlier than they would otherwise die as a result. The vast majority of people who smoke in America today started when they were teenagers. If they don't start smoking when they're on a schoolyard, it's very likely they never will. This epidemic is no accident. Children are bombarded daily by massive marketing campaigns that play on their vulnerabilities, their insecurities, their longings to be something in the world. Joe Camel promises that smoking will make you cool. Virginia Slim's models whisper that smoking will help you stay thin. T-shirts and sports sponsorship sends the message that healthy and vigorous people smoke, and that smoking is fun. A year ago this month, we launched a comprehensive strategy to kick tobacco out of the lives of our children. We proposed strong restrictions on advertising, marketing, and sales of cigarettes to children. In the year that followed, the FDA received a torrent of comments from the public, more than 700,000. By far the largest outpouring of public response in FDA's history. The FDA has heard from doctors, scientists, tobacco companies, and tens of thousands of children. We have carefully considered the evidence. It is clear that the action being taken today is the right thing to do, scientifically, legally, and morally. So today we are acting. First, young people will have to prove their age with an ID to buy cigarettes. Second, cigarette vending machines will be banned from anywhere children and teenagers can go. Third, children will be free of tobacco advertising on billboards near their schools and playgrounds, and billboards in other locations will be restricted to black and white text-only messages. Fourth, if a tobacco ad is in a publication children and teenagers are likely to read, it also has to be black and white with no pictures. Fifth, companies will no longer be permitted to target young people with marketing gimmicks like T-shirts and gym bags. Sixth, cigarette companies may no longer use brand names to sponsor tennis tournaments, auto races, and other sporting events. Finally, the FDA will soon take steps to require the tobacco industry to educate our children about the real dangers of smoking. There is abundant evidence of both these troubling trends that a lot of young people simply don't believe there's any risks to their health. With this historic action we are taking today, Joe Campbell and the Marlboro Man will be out of our children's reach forever. I want to be clear, we've said it before, let's say it again. Cigarettes are a legal product for adults. They have a perfect right to decide whether to smoke. There are many, many good people who have been farming growing tobacco for generations in their families. They have a right to make a living for themselves and their families, and they will continue to do so. But let's be honest. We hope that over the long run, if we can dramatically reduce rates of smoking among children, the overall consumption of cigarettes will decline. If that happens, these good people who farm the land and work hard should not be left behind. And all of us who have sought this course have a responsibility to help them if they face difficulties. The cigarette companies still have a right to market their products to adults. But today we are drawing the line on children, fulfilling our obligation as adults to protect them from influences that too often are stronger than they are. As I said before, I want to say again, this action is a tribute to so many of you who are here today, to the parents, the teachers, the doctors, the public officials. Dr. Bristow, I particularly want to commend the AMA for its writings in its journal, its relentless efforts to educate the American people through the physicians of this country. But I'd like to pay special tribute to the children of America who have joined this crusade, who have organized and led a massive grassroots movement throughout America to educate and inform people about the dangers of tobacco smoking to children. They've staged teach-ins and kick-butts days all across the country. They have used positive peer pressure on people who could care less what a lot of us old fogies think to teach their fellow students that smoking is not cool. So I want to thank these children for the work they have done to save their generation. A lot of the work we do around here, we know will only be fully manifest in people's lives in the future. We know we can't guarantee the success of any individual or family, but we have to guarantee them the tools and the conditions that will enable them to make the most of their own lives. Today, we take a real step to make sure that they have those lives in full measure. We have today met our responsibility to help our country protect its values, protect its children, and ensure its future. Thank you all for what you've done. Thank you.